close out of it. Yeah, there you go.
Hey, hello everybody in Proko land. This is Court Jones here, guy who made the caricature course. I'm excited to be here talking to y'all, answering questions you might have about my course, about the art of caricature, or anything else that you can think of. I'm at your disposal for the next, what, 2 hours, 3 hours? I don't know.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Yeah, so I might do a little sketching today too. We'll see. Mostly is just get some information out and get some questions answered and connect with everybody. So yeah, I'm excited about my course finally being out there. It's been, oh gosh, 3.5, almost 4 years since we started working on it in the very beginning. And I put a lot of myself and everything I know basically about caricatures into this course. So I hope everyone really finds it useful and can get a lot out of it and finds it helpful to them in their own pursuit of the art of caricature. Just to tell you a little about me, I had a quick bio in my first video, but I've been doing caricatures professionally since 1996. I started in theme parks like SeaWorld here in San Diego, and I just worked there for a few years in a few other parks. And I think that is a fantastic way to get started in the art of caricature. Because when you're working live in front of people from day one, you have to just throw yourself into it and go full guns blazing. There's no, you can't second guess yourself. You build up your confidence like right away. Even if your drawings are bad, you learn the art of working with people in front of them and conveying a sense of purpose and meaning. And you got to project this air that you know what you're doing, and they have to trust your judgment, and they're going to pay money for your art, like right there on the spot. It's incredibly nerve-wracking at first. I hated it the first couple months, but I stuck with it. I didn't know it would end up being a huge life-changing decision for me, because I didn't know at that point what kind of art I wanted to do in my life. Just sort of fell into it and ended up liking it. The other reason the theme park environment is great for learning caricatures is you work with all sorts of great artists that are already way more experienced than you, and you can watch how they solve problems and how they interact with people. And they can get you critiques on your drawing in real time or just right afterwards. If you get a reject, you can ask them why they think it was rejected. But rejects are exceedingly rare in the world of live caricature, I've found. Much less rejects actually happen than I would fear that they did, because there's always that part of yourself that you're not good enough. No matter how good you are, you're always thinking you're not good enough. But when people hand over their hard-earned money for something you drew for them, it's this incredible validation, like on the spot, this instant gratification that you did something, you created something worthwhile that somebody values and they want to hang in their home.
Hey, Court.
Yeah.
We have a first question.
All right.
Sanharth Ann asks, well, my question is how to use wash technique.
Gouache?
Wash.
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 Like watercolor washes?
I believe so.
Well, just use a lot of water. I've done a lot of watercolor painting and gouache painting myself, and the theory is basically just build up from light transparent layers into more opaque, darker layers as you go. And that is, there's no real secret to it. You just start broad, work large, work with a big brush, and the lighter you work, I guess the broader you work, you can start broad and then work your way down to the specific shapes later on. So it's a great way to start watercolor painting. It kind of eases you into it. So you see that white page initially, that blank white page, and if you start with some loose, light washes of color, it sort of breaks the tension, and you can just feel free to just keep on going after that, because you don't have to be too precious or perfect with washes. In fact, the more loose and spontaneous they are, the better, in my experience. So someone wants to know what's written on the skeleton. It's Happy Holidays from our house to yours. So Skelly's just celebrating the holidays here.
Yep.
We should get a little hat for him, a little Santa hat. Do we have one?
Yeah. Oh, we do.
Yeah, that would be a nice touch.
Stand up.
Ask and thou shalt receive. All right, wait a minute, for me? No, see, I got a giant head, and most hats do not fit me. Let's see. There we go. Perfect.
Let's see. Leonardo asks, any tips for someone who is starting to draw on a digital tablet?
Oh, well, that's something I do a lot of too. I've got a digital tablet right here myself. I draw on the Wacom Companion tablet. It's a Windows machine, and I love it. It's one of the best large purchases I've ever made. It's so responsive, but there are a lot of other great tablets out there too that you can do just fine work totally too. You don't have to have the big Wacom tablet. But you got to find your right program that works for you. Some people like sketching in Sketchbook Pro. Some people prefer Procreate on the iPad, or Brushes, I think is another one, by Sketches by Tayusui. It's a real good sketching program on the iPad. Photoshop also, of course. I like Corel Painter personally. I love the tools in that. The washy watercolor brushes are great, and the pencil brushes look like real pencils, and you can use the stylus on its side to do some shading. But it's no different really than drawing on paper in a lot of respects. It's just another tool that you just have to get used to its peculiarities. But yeah, just finding the program that works best for you, and just start drawing. There's no secret to it. You'll get used to any programs the more you use it.
Maybe with that you can start
quick
sketching.
Yeah, like I'll maybe do a little sketch here. Why isn't that not working?
There you go.
All right, let's go ahead and sharing my screen here in my tablet. I got Corel Painter open actually, and I don't know, what shall I draw here? Just gotta maybe.
What are some suggestions?
Just got a little skelly here. Caricature of Skelly, of course. Yeah, if you hear any suggestions, please.
I'll also let you know. So, Court, while you're drawing that, Sam Fortunato asks, any tips for drawing from imagination? It's very hard for me.
It's hard for a lot of us. Depends on what you're drawing and how familiar you are with that subject. And if you want to do it realistically or in a cartoony way, there's a lot of factors. But like I took a what do you call it? Drawing from the imagination figure drawing class at the Watts Atelier a few years ago. And what we would do is we would study the anatomy. We'd study models, live models, or figure drawing, or I'm sorry, photos of models, do a quick study of it from the reference, and then we would put the reference away and try to remember what we had just drawn. And that way we're starting to learn to commit those shapes and that anatomy to memory. And you just do it over and over and over again. It's literally just repetition. It wasn't fun. It was a class that kind of kicked my butt. I kind of dreaded it in a way because every class was so difficult and so challenging and so mentally taxing but that's when a class is really good for you, when it's really hard. Give it a little bit of personality here. I know skulls don't have really flexibility to them, but hey, it's a cartoon.
Another question comes from Marcos, and he asks, hey, Court, like you did at the beginning to start making money from your jobs, which I am personally a fan of, what tips would you give someone early in their careers?
Well, that depends on what you want to make money doing, I guess. If you want to get into live gigs, as we call them, doing live entertainment, doing caricatures at parties, you got to just start doing them live a lot. I always say work at a theme park is a great port of entry into that world, because not only do you get real world experience, you are meeting other artists who are in the same field, who they probably already do those kinds of jobs, those kinds of parties and events. And the more you network and get to know other people, the more likely you are to get work from them. I would also recommend joining organizations and art clubs that are on that subject. If it's in caricature in particular, there's one organization I know of that is dedicated to the art of caricature around the world, and that's the International Society of Caricature Artists, ISCA. I've been a member since 2000, And that organization has done more for me than just about anything besides art school for advancing my career, because I've just met so many people who are so good and inspired me and have given me lots of opportunities as well, just from, you know, working for them, you know, various agents that you might meet at those events or at those annual conferences, or friends you meet who, and I've had a few of them who wanted to bring me around the world to their countries to draw with them at their retail locations and train their workers. Just stuff like that I've gotten to do just from that organization. I also met my wife through that organization, believe it or not, another caricature artist. So the social networking and real networking with real art organizations, I think, helps a lot. And then, of course, just doing the work and doing the portfolio pieces of the type of thing you want to do. If you want to do stuff for magazines and print, like I do sometimes, you got to learn really good drawing skills and really good painting skills, and then start filling up your portfolio with those, you know, those pretty pieces that are going to get a lot of attention. And then get them out there in the world, get them on social media, get a, you know, solid-looking website. And then I always heard the best advice I think I probably heard was make sure your portfolio is cohesive, that it's uniform, that it kind of has the same look throughout, where you're not doing 10 different types of art all on that same page just trying to impress people. Because the more focused your portfolio is, the more people remember the look and style of your drawings, and you're more likely to get work doing just that thing.
Let's see, let me ask another question.
Yeah.
Matt asks, hi, are there any fundamentals that are more important for caricature than others? Caricatures than others?
For me, in my experience, the fundamental skills that helped the most was portrait drawing skills from life, and, you know, understanding the procedures for building a realistic head from life. Like Stan has that portrait drawing class on his site. I highly recommend that, because that's the next best thing to being in a really good art school. Stan and I both went to the same drawing atelier here in San Diego where they taught those concepts. And what Stan's done is kind of condensed them all and concentrated those lessons into these extremely potent little videos that are just on exactly what you need to know for building the head. And I do get into that a little bit in my own course on fundamentals of drawing caricature. I go over a lot of the portrait techniques I use that I apply towards caricature. And this is all going to be in part 1 of my course. In video 4, I'm actually going to talk a lot about some specific techniques I use in the portrait drawing world that carry over into caricatures really well. So.
Okay, another question is, what should I buy? Use Cintiq or a new Huion?
Oh, well, I've never used the Huion, or however it's pronounced. You know, I've heard good things and bad things about it. It's not as awesome as a Cintiq or a Wacom tablet, but it's a good price, and I think it does the job. So I have never used it, but like I said, you may have good luck with it. I like the Wacom products. I don't have a big one myself because it's really expensive. I just have this tablet, which is kind of moderately expensive. I would like to get a real big one day. It's like 24-inch or one of the larger ones. Because yeah, I love having larger screen real estate to just, you know, because I like to draw from my shoulder, and that's super important. When you have a smaller tablet, you end up drawing more from your wrist and your fingers, and that's just not how I was trained to draw. I was trained to draw on a big 18 by 24-inch sheet of newsprint. And if I can get larger arm movements in, you know, that I think that can really help. So if your choice is between not having a tablet at all, or a Cintiq at all, and getting a Huion, or I think Yi Nova is another brand of inexpensive artist large screen tablets, I would get one of them. I would try it, because yeah, if you don't like them, I guess you can always return them. But yeah, I would say go for it.
Switch back to the drawing.
Yeah, real fun drawing here. It's Skelly. If you have any requests, maybe I'll do that too. Keep your eye out for a request, John. It's a little smile on his face.
Psycho Calamander asks, hey Court, what do you think about Peter Hahn, who says that gesture drawing is completely pointless and only form and anatomy matter?
I don't know who Peter Hahn is. But I would say that's completely wrong. No disrespect to Mr. Han, but gesture is everything. I mean, you can't have good form and anatomy without good flow and movement and gesture to the pose of whatever it is you're drawing. You're just going to get a lot of stiff, well-drawn muscles that don't flow or connect into one another. So I always start every drawing with the gesture, essentially, if that helps to know. I mean, some people might, you might call it a wireframe, or you might call it just the flowing line from the head down to the spine, just to get the movement in. But gesture drawing is just critical to good drawing, if you ask me. It's probably one of the most important things, way more important than even good anatomical knowledge, is having good gestural skills. Because you can do a lot more if you have good gestural skills than if you have just good anatomy skills, if that makes sense. Because you can apply those gestural strokes, that good instinct for drawing flow and rhythm, you can apply that to a wider range of drawing styles. You don't have to be totally realistic with it. You can do good cartooning or good abstract art with better gestural drawing skills.
I'm noticing that a few people, after you're done with Skelly, if you want to see a caricature of Stan and a dog.
Caricature of Stan and a dog. Well, I'd have to have a picture of Stan, or you'd have to come in here and pose for me, because I haven't committed to memory necessarily. I do plan to do a Stanicature at some point in the future, but I haven't really practiced him or anything. So I haven't done any loose thumbnail sketches of him yet. But and we can look for some good photos here, maybe on my phone.
See, while you're looking through that, Wolf Nothing asks, what if you hate drawing realistic things?
If you hate drawing realistic things, then don't draw them, I guess. I mean, if you got to ask yourself, though, the reason you hate them. Is it because it's hard and the drawings always turn out bad? That's not a good reason to not draw something. If you just literally don't have any interest in drawing realistic things, and that's as far as it goes, then yeah, just draw what you want. If you want to be an abstract artist or a comic artist or a caricature artist, that's, without drawing realistically at all, that's fine. But just ask yourself why you don't want to draw them, and is it because of a lack of comfort in that area? And if it is a lack of comfort, that's a weakness you should address, because you don't want to limit yourself by the things that are too hard to draw. I myself fall into that trap sometimes of avoiding things I don't like. Like, I don't have a lot of architecture, for instance, and buildings in my drawings and paintings. I try to find ways to avoid that, usually because I'm on a deadline, or I don't have a lot of time to commit to a particular portfolio piece I might be doing. So I'll find creative ways around doing complex architecture. I do a lot of plein air painting as well, and I'll take my easel out into nature, and I try to avoid shots with architecture. I've done it in the past, and it turns out fine. It's just I find more, I do have more of a connection and interest in the natural shapes of the landscape as opposed to man-made objects. I kind of like the landscapes to be sort of timeless looking. So I think that's actually more of a reason, a valid reason to avoid something, is because those aren't the things you want to depict and interpret in your art. But if the job comes up, and the jobs have come up where I had to do architecture, you do them, and you muddle through them even if you don't like them, because that's what the job is.
Let's see. I don't know if there's like a dog breed that you'd want to do like a caricature of. I just pulled up pugs. I don't know.
Yeah, we can try a pug or something.
Pugs are like.
So we'll try the first one there. We got a little pug. I'm gonna try to draw that. Dogicatures. You can put icature at the end of just about any sentence if you're going to be drawing. Oh, again, you got it. Okay. And you can make it into like a cute caricature thing. Like, there's people I know that do butt sketches, and you can call them butticatures. It's a thing. I've done them even once or twice. Let's see here. Let's get the layer. Okay, I always start with my big shapes first here. Get that head in. And if you're caricaturing something, you're going to caricature something off of the norm, of the average. And to me, there's so many different dog breeds. I try to kind of combine them all, or just sort of think of a generalized mutt, you know, a combination of all dogs put together, and how does this dog differ from all those other dogs, or that sort of prototype mutt dog. And this pug is very distinctive. It has a flat face, the eyes are very wide apart, very low on the head, and the nose comes up really far between the two eyes. Has muzzle there. Again, I always start drawings like this, loose, gestural, quick. I don't try to draw the finished product right from the get-go. I always want to get the gesture and the movement of the pose in first. So I'm not going to do those wrinkles or anything first. I'm just going to get the big shapes in. Got the ears up there. Get some of that stubby, roly-poly body in there too. There we go. So that's the, you know, the essence of what's going on right there. So now let's draw some of those folds and wrinkles in. Here's one on the sort of neck fold. There's a fold above the muzzle. You know, sad-eyed eyebrow folds. And I'm trying to exaggerate the folds as well, make them a little bit more, you know, meaty and curvy. Has that sort of sad expression that I can try to caricature the expression as well. A little reflection there. Oops, I accidentally rotated the image. There we go. I had touch sensitivity on this. I had to turn it off because my hand was making the picture rotate. Yeah, one thing about the Wacom tablet has a lot of really good controls. You can turn touch sensitivity on or off whenever you want using the express keys. And I have it off more often than not just because it usually messes me up.
McKinnell asks, hi, Master Jones, which is the first I will study, perspective or human anatomy? You study first.
Well, it depends on, again, everything depends on your course of action, what interests you most, and what you want to get out of your art training. I mean, I know the perspective course won't be up for a little while, and it's coming, but the anatomy and figure drawing courses already are. So, I mean, I would take advantage of personally what's already available to you on the Proko website. And you know, figure drawing skills are not just about drawing, being able to draw the figure and nothing else. It gives you skills that allow you to, you know, apply those things to just about any type of drawing or drawing any type of subject. The skills are the same that you learn when you're doing the figure. Just the figure happens to be something that's readily available, that we're really familiar with. And, you know, it's kind of easy to tell when something on the figure is off. So it's a good training aid in that way. But yeah, I highly recommend figure drawing and head drawing because they kind of teach you the fundamental concepts that are necessary to drawing in general.
And Lewis asks, when one needs to learn anatomy, should they also learn how to caricature at the same time, or does going back and forth from being anatomically correct to caricature hinder someone?
That's a good question. You know, I hear that from a lot of people, you know, or they wonder about that, if it's, you know, learning caricature will hurt their traditional drawing skills. And, you know, it hasn't hurt me in my experience. You know, what's it called? You mode switch, you go back and forth between whatever the job entails. So if I'm in a figure drawing class trying to draw realistically, I put those rules in my mind as the things that the goals I want to accomplish for today. You know, the only thing I think that hurt me initially when I started going to a fine art school, I'd already been doing caricatures a few years, quick sketch caricatures. And I think I was very fast and very sloppy in a lot of my drawings at the art school. And I attribute that to my just sense of urgency that I learned when drawing live caricatures in front of people. Yeah, and that that was just something I recognized early on, like, oh, I got to just slow down. That's a weakness of mine, is I go too fast sometimes and I rush and I make poor judgments. As long as you identify what your weaknesses and strengths are, it shouldn't hurt you, as long as you know what's going on and what the goals are for each session of drawing you're sitting down to do. Let's get like a charcoal stick here to shade with.
Nice. Alfred Reed asks, what made you take up caricature drawing, and how long does it take for a person to master the craft?
Well, for me, I started when I was 22, and I think I finally started to get good in the past couple years, and that's been almost 20 years now. No, I mean, seriously, it took me probably a year or two before I was remotely comfortable drawing live in front of people, thinking I was doing decent sketches. And yeah, I mean, I was doing it every day. So if you're not doing it every day in a live environment like I was, it's going to take a while. But the more you do it, the more you put into it, the faster your progress will be. It's just like working out in the gym. Someone can teach you how to do the weightlifting and the routines to make your muscles bigger, but they're not going to get bigger unless you actually do the workouts yourself, and you do them all the time. You have to keep up with them. So yeah, everybody's progress is always individual. It's not. It's hard to say how long it's going to take, really, each person to get good.
Nice. Mark Lawler asks, when caricaturing normal everyday people with common features, what tips do you offer for capturing their special look?
Well, that average head diagram in the first lesson, there's almost no one that matches that exactly. So no matter who they are, even if you're not familiar with their features because it's the first time you met them, they're not a celebrity, they're not someone you've seen before necessarily, they still are going to differ from the average. So you have to take basically a quick mental snapshot of their likeness. I like to look at them real briefly and then turn back to my paper and start just drawing the shapes that come to my mind. And in that sense, I'm drawing from my instincts about what I know about the average face. It's not like I have a copy of the average head diagram right next to me, but it is committed to memory. It's in my memory banks that I can always draw upon. Another way to look at it is the more faces you draw out there, the more experienced you get at drawing people out there in the world. You're building up your library or your reserve of faces. So I've probably drawn, I don't know, close to 100,000 faces, honestly, in my 20 years of doing live quick sketch caricatures. And that's a huge reserve of faces to be stored in one person's brain. But that means I can draw upon that more quickly. I have that amalgam of that human prototype face in there from all those people that I've drawn over my life, that I can judge this person right in front of me and say, oh yeah, your eyes are slightly narrower than the average. Oh, your eyes are slightly farther apart than the average. Or, oh, your chin is kind of more square than the average. And I do that on every point of the face. I start from the big shapes. I start from the head shape and then work my way down into the details. And at every point and every decision I make in that live quick drawing I'm doing, I'm asking myself those questions. How does this person differ from everyone else I've ever drawn? So the more experienced you get at it, the better your instincts will become.
And Christina asks, what artists do you like the most?
There's so many I like for so many different reasons. Probably my number one just favorite fine artist who's working today is Jeremy Lipkin. He does portraits, landscapes, figurative pieces, and just a beautiful painter and draftsman. I've been lucky enough to take a couple workshops with him, and just watching his process and how slow and deliberate he builds his shapes is very informative and inspiring. But I love people across all genres. There's cartoonists and comic artists I love, caricature artists, obviously, like Sebastian Kruger and Jan Optebeek, people who are working today who are big inspirations to me in that world. There's in the historical world, there's John Singer Sargent and Zorn and Sorolla and Philippe de Laszlo. These are all portrait artists, or people who did a lot of portraits, who just were master painters who could just say so much with a single brush stroke. And I find things that inspire me about each artist. You know, I love the way Lipkin's paintings, you know, make me want to get closer and just look at them. They like whisper to me. You know? Whereas as John Singer Sargent painting, I don't want to say it shouts at me, but it's just like such a bold statement, and it's so simply executed, deceptively so, because he would paint and rework an area several times to get that simple look. But yeah, there's things I admire in everybody across all, you know, things I admire in so many artists across all artistic genres. It's really hard to pin one down. Let me get back to my dog here. That charcoal stick wasn't shading very well, so I switched over to this one here. Yeah, occasionally your career, you'll be asked to do things like this, like caricature a dog for somebody for a commission or for an illustration piece, and it's good to just, you know, practice stuff that's out of your comfort zone. So like I'm locked out of your phone. I let it screen die.
Marcos Migashi asks, if you can send advice to your past self when you started to draw years ago, what would you say to yourself?
That's a good question. Draw more, you lazy bum. Seriously, like, you know, I would just be really lax in my drawing practice. You know, I would sit at home and not work on stuff that, you know, my fundamental skills. I kind of relied on art classes to get that drawing time in, and I wouldn't do as much stuff at home in my own free time that I really should have. I would just draw during times when I had an assignment or a, you know, whether it was a school assignment, you know, when I was in college, or you know, a job from somebody, a freelance job. That's when I would do my drawing, and I wouldn't do much on my own otherwise. And so that's a real bad habit, is just managing my time to practice. And the more art classes you take, the more stuff you watch by, you know, really skilled and talented people, the more ideas you'll get on how to practice on your own at home. Because when there's no one to guide you at home, no one to say, hey, okay, sit down and draw this shoe, you know, when there's no one to give you that assignment, you're less likely to be focused and work on any one thing. So you got to set goals for yourself, and yeah, set goals for yourself and stick to them. So try to stick on a schedule for when you're going to practice, whether it's an hour each day after you come home from your job. Yeah, just draw more. That's what I would have said to myself.
Giant Jam Sandwich asks, is there a fine line between drawing a caricature and drawing ethnocentric features? And if so, how do we make sure not to cross it?
Well, I'm not sure I understand that question, because, I mean, people are on a spectrum all across the world of facial feature types. You know, there's certain types that are common to, you know, people in East Asia, and African eye types or facial types. Everyone will have the same basic proportions as everyone else. It's just the details that are slightly different. And when we're studying quick sketch caricature and doing that in the real world in the theme parks, you learn quickly how to draw a Caucasian eye versus an Asian eye. And I don't really go into that in my course. It's really just down to observation. I mean, I could say a few things that are like notes I have that would be helpful, but I'm hesitant to, because not, you know, there are many, many different types of Asian faces, many types of African faces. So it's like I said, everyone's on a spectrum, and people are blending together in the world. And you really just have to take each person on a case-by-case basis, and don't be afraid of offending someone for drawing their ethnicity the way you see it. Because to not do that, to try to avoid the specifics of someone's racial type, is kind of an insult to them. Actually, you're kind of overlooking what makes them unique and trying to make them into some formulaic, standard head. You know, we're not trying to make people closer to the average. We're trying to heighten what makes everyone different from the average. So the things that make certain races different from the average you might be using as your own standard of judgment, those things get exaggerated. And, you know, same thing with someone who's older than the average or who's younger than the average. Someone who's really young, like a little baby or toddler, is going to get, you know, eyes that are really low down on their head, kind of like this pug that I've been drawing, in a large cranium. And those are just things that are specific to a young facial type. There's certain things that are specific to an elderly person's type. And you got to be honest with them and just be, I don't want to say be ruthless, because caricature isn't about being vicious. That's not, you know, anything that even like enters my mind. I'm just trying to do that person justice and trying to make the things that make them unique stand out even more, so that they look different from the crowd and different from the average. Looks like this dog's brain is on the outside of his head. That's what all these folds look like to me. Let me know if there's any more questions. I'll just try shading the pug here. So now I'm actually sampling from some of the colors that are on the pug's face. Like I sampled one of the gray tones. Earlier I was just using pure black and various levels of pressure control to get that effect. But now I'm just kind of going over those areas and smoothing them out with a gray tone that I sampled from the face. And whenever I do digital painting and digital drawing, well, when I'm doing digital painting, I should say, or working with tones, I always have one finger on the keyboard, and that one finger is always on the Alt key. Because in most painting programs, the Alt key, at least on a Windows machine, I don't know about Macs because I'm not a Mac guy, I guess that's the Option key, switches your paintbrush over to a sampling tool so you can sample colors. And I'm always sampling colors from within the drawing. After I've gotten my first few tones and colors established, then I'll just also work with the tones and values that are present in the drawing already or in the painting. And that's my one secret that not a secret, but it's just a technique I always do when I'm painting digitally, is I'm sampling from my own drawing all the time, constantly.
Michael B asks, what can you advise someone who wants to better his drawing skills besides practice?
Study a lot of artists you really like. I have a huge file at home on my computer of artists who, whenever I find their work online, something, no matter what it is, whether it's a landscape, a portrait, a caricature, a still life, I'll just save it to that, that folder on my hard drive that's full of other artists' works. And I'll occasionally just go look through them and just be amazed at the skill that it took to make those. And so the more people you look at and study, the more likely it is that they're going to influence how you draw and paint. Because, if you like the way Sargent pulls a brush stroke and that just appeals to you so much, like the way it does me, you're more likely to repeat that or strive for that unconsciously in your own work. So study only work that you really, really like and admire, and hopefully it'll get ingrained in you and you'll be able to regurgitate that at a later date. It's kind of like the friends you hang out with, or the people, is more of a reflection on you and who you are. Same thing with like the artists that you like. The more artists you make sure you study the good artists. Don't look at bad art because you'll regurgitate bad art. Okay, I think I'm done with this pug here. I'm just doing a little quick cutesy sketch. It's not really anything I want to do a finish, but yeah. So
let's see. Alfred Reed asks, which do you prefer, traditional or digital?
Depends. Like every question, pretty much my answers are always, it depends a lot on the circumstance. Ideally, in an ideal world, it's all going to be traditional. I love oil painting. I love watercolor painting. I love inking. But the dictates of the real world are that you need to produce things more quickly, and you can do certain things much more easily in Photoshop or on a digital painting program than you can on canvas. And edits are a lot easier, and that's super important when you're handing in a job to someone and you need to refine or redraw some aspect or move someone from over here to over there. Sometimes you can even do a combination of both traditional and digital. Like I've done jobs where I've painted it in oils or watercolors, and I was able to edit it digitally later just because, you know, I had to, not that I wanted to. But yeah, I love oil paints. One of the things I do that's just purely for me and purely for joy is I go out painting landscapes in oils on just little canvases whenever I get a chance, because I love the look and feel of oils on a linen canvas. There's nothing like it, and it's always you know, good too if you're just, it's a practical matter. If you can do more artwork traditionally in the traditional realm for your illustration work, you know, you'll, after you get done with that job that you've submitted this piece to the newspaper or a book cover or whoever, you now have this artwork that you can sell on the open market to a collector down the road. Say if you get really famous or you find someone who just really likes your work, you can make a secondary income off of your traditional artwork. So I would say lean towards the traditional if you can. And then the other reason too is you're more likely to develop your own personal style and look when you're working traditionally. Digital painting makes it so easy to be a generic artist because you can refine something to the point where it's airbrushed and perfect with no flaws in it whatsoever. But the things that you think are flaws are really the things that make a painting yours and make it distinct from everyone else out there. And that's your biggest asset as an artist, is your individuality and your individual voice. If your work looks like every other romance novel book cover art out there, you know, who are you? You can't really charge a lot for your artwork because there's 10 other people, 100 other people who can do the exact same thing you can. So if you learn only digital painting from the get-go, you're more likely to not really have a super distinct looking style. Personally, I think my style has come from my drawing training, my working with oils and gouache and watercolor and inking. You know, just the way I handle my paintbrushes, the paintbrushes I choose, the canvases I choose, those all contribute to how the paint reacts to the surface and the ultimate finished look of my paintings. If I were an airbrush artist, my paintings would have an airbrush look. And if that's the look you want, that's great. But you're more likely to carry over those techniques and those decisions into the digital realm if you started as a traditional artist first. I've always believed that. So I would say learn your skills traditionally and then pick up digital a little bit later if you can, if that's at all practical for you.
You're ready for another sketch, right?
Oh, sure.
Okay, cool. I think a lot of people are asking for Santa.
Santa?
Santa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, I know what Santa looks like, but it's always good to just have some reference to look at. And maybe I'll do my interpretation of the Haddon Sunbloom Santa. He's the guy that did all those famous Santa Clauses for the Coca-Cola in the mid-20th century. So just give me a minute here. I mean, we want, I'm not really doing like comic art today, so I'm not really going to do scenarios, I guess. I'm just kind of really stick with the face. But yeah, here's a Santa that I'm going to, there we go, this guy here. See if I can do a little caricature of the Sunbloom Santa. All right, let's put this one here.
Digital Drafting asks, do you use help construction like circles to draw faces?
Yeah, I'm doing them right now. I'm not doing like perfect circles or anything. Like I don't have a real strict approach to how I construct each new face, but I'll do simple shapes first just to sort of block them in and get my ideas down as quickly as possible. But no, I won't do necessarily like a perfect circle for the cranium. And sometimes I do, but it's definitely not consistent, that's for sure. So this Santa has a nice wispy mustache that kind of flares up on the end. Beard is pretty fluffy. So yeah, here I've got Santa sort of blocked in, and that's how I usually like to think of it first, is I block in the initial concept for the sketch, and then sort of flesh it out.
Bear Frozen 55 asks, do you draw often in public? And if so, do you get into trouble with people when drawing the human figure? I have my cell phone full of anatomy studies and I kind of hide myself because I'm a bit ashamed.
Well, never be ashamed to be an artist. Just wear dark sunglasses if you're going to do it in public, so people can't see you looking at them. But no, I don't do like stealth sketching, if that's what you're referring to. I mean, I paint outdoors, like I mentioned earlier, and people are always just fascinated because they want to see what you're painting, and it's usually just the landscape, no actual people. But no, that's not something I really ever do. I think you should do it though if that's something that inspires you and you want to like understand the human form a little bit better in a natural setting. Steve Silver, does that quite a bit. He did a video with Stan about how he'll just go to a shopping center or a mall and just draw people out in the world really quickly. He's not doing necessarily caricature likenesses of them. He's just doing studies that will inspire him when he goes back into the studio to do a character design for a TV show.
Next question comes from Miguel, and he asks, can we expect two caricatures of the same person to have the same features exaggerated? If not, then what needs to remain consistent to maintain a good likeness despite this variance?
Every time a new artist draws someone else, draws a subject, it'll be completely different from when I draw them or if you draw them. There's a million ways you can draw and caricature somebody. My next video, actually, that's coming out tomorrow, the next lesson, talks about this, actually. There's never one right way to draw anybody. But there are certain features in common that definitely will help if you make sure you get them in there. Like for a Santa Claus here, you have to draw someone who's fat and jolly with a long white beard. Otherwise, it's not going to look like what we think of as Santa. Or Father Christmas if you're in Europe, I guess. Yeah, so it's really wide open. I can draw the same person over and over many times and come up with a completely different solution each single time, and they can all look like the person. And that's one of the things I find so fascinating about caricature. It's not an exact science. It's an art form. In that sense, it's maybe more of an art form than portraiture, in that it's more open to the interpretation of the artist to get a likeness, because likeness is not dependent on exact shapes. That's not how we recognize people in this world. We don't recognize them by memorizing the exact distance between features. It's all about relationships between the features, maintaining those proportions, and you can stretch those proportions, but they have to be truthful to what's already there. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there's a million different ways you can draw someone, and there's no one right way in any given circumstance. So whenever I critique people's artwork, when I critique their caricatures, I'll never say, oh, you know what, he doesn't actually have a big forehead. You drew him a big forehead, and you can't draw a big forehead on a person. That's never a right answer in caricature when critiquing someone. It's a large forehead could work on this person if you do other things. If you do B, C, and D, the large forehead will look okay. So it's all relative to the individual drawing you're doing.
And Sonal Prabhum asks, what, according to you, are your weaknesses?
Well, see, I'm a little bit shy about singing in public, and no. That's a good question. Every artist should be aware of what their weaknesses are. Like I mentioned earlier, I realized early on in my drawing training that, rushing, going too fast was a weakness of mine, or it was a tendency I had to draw too fast all the time, and it'd be a little sloppy. And I think I always still fight with that when I'm doing something traditional or I'm out there in the landscape where the light is changing constantly. Uh, there's a tendency to want to rush because the light is going away. But yeah, I'd say that, and I mentioned the architecture thing. It's something I sometimes maybe avoid too much or try to work my way around. And then I guess when I'm trying to think about my jobs that I've done in the past, like when I've been asked to do something, uh, and I can try to find ways to work around it. I guess it's like the things I said, monotonous things tend to bore me. Like if I have to do a building, especially with lots of repetitive arches and windows in it, it just, God, that drives me insane. There are people who love that sort of thing and can do like these amazing comic art backgrounds with, a cityscape with all this architecture and stuff in the background, and that just does not appeal to me in the slightest. I just do not like repetitive artwork. I like everything I do to be new and different. So in that sense, maybe I guess maybe a short attention span might be a weakness. So now I'm just kind of using darker lines here. The original sketchy lines were kind of gray and light, but now I'm committing to the shapes with darker strokes. This eyebrow's a little wrong.
Rix asks, what can you do to make people sketching easier? I'm always worried about people asking me if I draw.
He's worried about what?
I think he's worried about like capturing the likeness, being judged for it.
Well, that's a concern every caricature artist has, especially because that's your main job, is to capture a likeness. It's not always. I mean, it is about the humor and does it make me laugh? But if it doesn't look like the person, that is the thing that will make a caricature not be a good caricature. Is it doesn't look like the person. So that just sounds like maybe a little anxiety that might come with not being as experienced, being out there in the world, drawing people every day like I did in the theme parks. When you do that sort of thing, you get that validation, whether it's deserved or not. You still feel like you're validated if people are buying your artwork right from you there on the spot. So that kind of gives you the confidence to think, hey, I can do this. Each new guest that sits down in front of me, I'm not so much worried anymore. The more experienced I am at it, because I have this track record of doing successful drawings that people seem to like. So it'll just come with that experience, I guess, getting out there in front of people. And again, you don't have to work in a theme park environment necessarily. If that's not your thing, or if there's not one near you, you can always go to a public park or a tourist area and just set up shop and just see what happens. I mean, well, you should make sure you've got your ducks all in a row and you've got your permits, and don't do it illegally. Some areas are restrictive about what you can do out in public, when you're busking or doing things for tips. So yeah, just get out there and do it, and then there's no real quick way to do that other than just by doing it. You just got to get out there in front of the public and put faith in yourself.
And Luis Felipe Silva asks, how long did it take you to develop your security in drawing digital lines over table pads? So I guess making your lines smooth.
Well, I mean, that came, I think I had the advantage, again, of working with markers in a live quick sketch environment, so I developed a pretty decent line quality. Whatever tool I picked up, I could do reasonably good lines. I mean, this is a sketchy sketch. These are not like pretty lines by any means. But if I was doing, I'll just add an extra layer here. I'll show you like what I do sometimes when I'm drawing live digital sketches. A little bigger here. So I'll go over, let me decrease this. Yeah, make this a little lighter so you can see so I'll draw some dark ink lines on top of this. There we go. So, you develop a natural instinct for where to put thick and thin lines. when you work with markers and ink a lot, to the point where you can do a pretty reasonably clean looking sketch. And some jobs or some styles really call for that clean look. And usually it's the faster you pull a stroke, the more nice looking that stroke's going to be. Because things like tablets or even an ink pen when you're working on paper is going to pick up the little tiny hand movements if you move more slowly. Let's go with an even thicker line here. I like to really do lots of interesting thick and thin variations. When you're doing things like this furry hat, you want to vary your stroke direction. That's something you pick up from doing live quick sketch caricatures, I think. Yeah, that's maybe not the prettiest line, but it's close. Digital does make it a little harder to do pretty lines and pretty strokes. It's a lot easier with a real marker on real paper because you get that tactile resistance of the paper. I think I'm just going to do one bell here. I did two earlier and it looked kind of weird, so I'm just going to leave it one bell.
XX Healy XX asks, what brushes do you think are the best to draw with?
In digital painting programs?
Let's do digital.
It doesn't matter at all, really. Because every painting program is different, so I don't know what you're using, so it's really hard to tell you exactly what is going to be best and what's not. But in Corel Painter here, I'm using just the HB pencil, and then right now I'm using the scratchboard pen tool. I think it's better than the actual inking tools in Corel. Just gives a much crisper line. It looks like a vector line. It's so crisp. But I'll do a lot of customization of my brushes too in Corel or in Photoshop. So the lines you get from the program right out of the box are not necessarily the lines you're going to get. I mean, I change them so to the feel that works best for me. See, variety in brushstroke, that's key. It makes the drawing look way more interesting. And that's true for just about any medium you're using, whether it's paint or charcoal or pencil. You want to vary your brush strokes, the types of strokes that you use, the directions of the strokes, and just have brush strokes visible. Some people like to paint so smoothly that you don't see any remnant of any brush stroke at all, just totally smoothed out and airbrushed. And I think those are the most uninteresting paintings of them all. I like to see a variety of hard edges and soft edges, lost edges. When we're doing, inkings, you got to do a variation of line weights.
And kind of along that same theme, Buzz Shea asks, any recommendation like pens that you would recommend, like physical pens?
If you're talking about live quick sketch, I really do like the what's called the Chart Pack Fine Tip marker. It gives a pretty good thin and thick, and they're very durable. Of course, one of these days that pen is probably going to go away because that's what always happens with good art materials is my favorite pens always disappear. When I first started doing caricatures in theme parks, we were using the Design 229 LF marker. It'll go down in history. Everyone loved that marker. But for some reason, they discontinued it. And every caricature artist around the world cried in agony when it went away. But then we found the Marquette, which was made by Dixon, came out of Canada, I think. It was a really good replacement for the 229 LF. And then they went and they changed the tip. They just started manufacturing it in a different plant. I don't know. It's no good anymore. So right now the tip, or the pen that most of us, or a lot of people I know are using for live artwork is the Chart Pack Fine Tip black marker. It's kind of a cone-shaped tip. It's kind of hard on your hands, though. It's not as flexible as those earlier markers. So you have to press harder and draw at an angle to get a fatter line, but it works pretty well. I'm not a big fan of brush tip pens. They're too soft. It's really hard to get good control with a soft brush tip like the Copic brush tips, fine tips. They're just too soft.
Cool. And he asks, what are the benefits of learning caricature drawing for the sake of improving your traditional portrait drawing skills?
Well, if you ask me, and if you ask some portrait artists throughout history, who I've read quotes from, like, I'm going to mispronounce this name terribly, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, I-N-G-R-E-S. I read a quote from him somewhere that's saying, portrait art is caricature, or caricature is portrait art. The essence of finding a likeness can be found in studying of caricature, because all you're doing in caricature is you're finding what makes the person unique and different from the average and making those differences more obvious. And the portrait artist is doing the same thing, just along that spectrum of like 1 to 10. If caricature is at 8, 9, or 10, portraiture really isn't at 0. It's like at 1 to 1.5 to maybe 2 on the level of exaggeration. All good portrait artists exaggerate a little bit, and you should be confident enough to know when to do that. A lot of times caricaturing a portrait has to do with flattering the subject. You know, if you give a long thin neck to, like, say, a lady, they'll be more flattered by it, even if it's not totally true. And it'll make them look younger and thinner. And that's a subtle type of caricature that a lot of portrait artists do, making the fingers more slender, or simplifying the face to not have as many obvious wrinkles on it. That's another type of caricature. Caricature, to me, is just changing the subjects, changing what you see in the subject to get a desired result. The result doesn't always have to be funny. Caricature you can caricature someone to look like the Hulk if you want. That's you're making their masculinity more exaggerated, to draw the muscles larger. That's a type of caricature. Although those pinup girls that Gil Elvgren did in the mid-century that's a form of caricature. He was beautifying them more. If you look at a lot of his original reference photos that he used for those pinup girls, they didn't look like that. He slimmed down the waist, made the bust larger, made the neck thinner, made the face smoother. That's all a type of caricature. So caricature is everywhere in traditional art and portrait art. People may not have known they were doing caricatures at the time. They didn't call it that, but it is a type of caricature. And caricature just gives you that confidence to alter and change those things that you think need changing for the purpose of the goal in that particular assignment or that particular portrait that you're doing.
And Octavia wants to know, do you think that some caricatures can be considered finished only in linear draw, like the Santa is now?
Yeah, that's just a matter of personal preference and what the nature of the job is. That's, I mean, to me, no, this is not, my Santa is definitely not a finished drawing. You know, it's definitely just a quick study. Personally, now that I'm looking at it, I don't really like it. I'm going to make that disappear. But it just depends on what it is you're drawing for, who you're drawing for. You know, if you're drawing something for a client, it's going to have more polish in it, definitely. You're going to spend more than the 10 minutes that I spent on it, or 15 minutes. Yeah, so you just, it's all case specific, so. Yeah, I think I'm done with the
Santa.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Matt asks, you said that you've been drawing for about 20 years. What about it keeps you going? And what is your why?
Well, that's a deep question.
It is a deep question.
Well, I mean, I find the work really rewarding. I mean, I don't do just caricature for my professional art. It's probably 90% caricature. I mean, I found something that I'm reasonably good at, that people seem to like, and that's kind of fun to be rewarded for something that you like, and then you get to keep doing, and you don't have to go do another job that has nothing to do with it. You know, I don't have to go work in a print shop or somewhere else that is vaguely related to art. You know, when I first started doing caricatures, it was, well, it's at a theme park, and that was literally drawing for a living, but it wasn't, you know, it was just a small slice of the art world that I was experiencing. Then when I started doing live entertainment at parties, that actually paid pretty well for the amount of hours that you work. So it gave me a lot of free time to pursue my traditional drawing and painting skills that allowed me to get more into illustration and eventually become a teacher. Where I taught at the atelier where I went, I ended up teaching for about 10 years there, various classes, not just caricature, but I taught digital painting, I taught facial expressions and facial anatomy, taught portrait painting one time there in oils, and it's just super fun, and people seem to want to keep paying me to do it, so that's, I guess, what keeps me going. If no one wanted to see my artwork or pay me for it, I guess I would have to find something else, because you got to survive somehow. And yeah, and I know I'm just really lucky. I've found a niche that fits my skill set and my desires, but I do still want to keep on growing and do other things. Some of the artists I really admire, like Sebastian Kruger, doesn't really do caricatures anymore. He does these large scale pop portraits that are a little exaggerated, but not much. They're pretty much portraiture. And some people are kind of disappointed in that he moved away from that. But you got to go where the artwork takes you, and the challenges that you want to give yourself are what's going to keep you moving and feeling like you're moving forward and not just stagnating. So if I feel like I'm ever stagnating doing caricatures, I might move on to something else. But it's still super challenging to me and super fun, so I keep on doing it.
Let's see. Oh, a lot of people are commenting on the shirt.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, this is a great shirt. It was made by a friend of mine here in San Diego, another caricature artist. He makes and sells them, actually, if you're interested. Let's go ahead and... I asked him earlier, he said it was all right if I showed this on the stream, and he said that was fine. His name is Damon Renthrope. Hey, Damon, if you're watching, really good guy. And he has a few other artist shirts as well, done in different logos and different sort of retro styles. And his email, you can email him directly if you want to order a shirt like this. Or they come in red, they come in ladies' sizes as well. And then, like I said, some other logo shirts that he has that he can tell you about. Just email him at Damon, WYD, @yahoo.com. That's Damon, DAMON, WYD, @yahoo.com. And maybe we'll put that in the, in the description of the video later. If people are interested, they can look that up.
Olivia wants to know, I don't know if you already answered this, but do you ever do watercolor painting? And if so, any tips?
Yeah, I love watercolor paintings. Whenever I do the annual conference of the International Society of Caricature Artists, I pretty much always do watercolors because they're just so fun, and I don't get enough opportunity to do them for clients and at home in the studio. So, I'll usually do an inking outline first and then watercolor on the inside. But whenever I do watercolor paintings now that are more loose and unstructured, the more I'm happy with them. I would try to be a little bit too tight and perfect with them in the beginning. And looking back on those paintings, they're not as interesting to look at. So I would just say, add a lot of water, splash it around, let it drip, let it spread on the paper. Get good paper, though. That's the key with watercolors. With oils, you can paint on just about any surface. It can be a cheap piece of wood with gesso on it. You can get a great oil painting. But with watercolors, the surface is everything. I personally like Arches, or Arch, I guess it's called, brand watercolor blocks. They come in really smooth hot press surface and a cold press surface that's more grainy. Lately, I've been really liking the rough, grainy surface. And you don't have to get the expensive Arches. You can get Canson paper. There's any brand of watercolor paper, as long as it's really heavy, like 40 pounds, 90 pounds, it's really stiff, thick paper. Otherwise, it's going to warp on you if it's too thin. But the reason I like the Arches is because it's the pad has it all glued down on all four edges, so it keeps it from buckling while you're working on it. Because that's kind of distracting, if you ask me. But yeah, be loose, be sloppy, and have fun with it. Watercolors are a medium that kind of you have to work with it, not against it. You can't, don't try to control it too much. And start, if you're not familiar with watercolor painting at all, or any kind of painting, start monochromatically. I always tell people that if there's just learning any kind of painting, just start with black and white. With watercolors, you can just do black and water, do grayscale studies, just to get the feel of how the medium works and how much water you have to add to get a certain effect. Don't bring color into it too soon. Just learn it in grayscale first is always a good tip I tell people. Ow, I just hit my head leaning down because I had to pick up something.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
My pen lost its tone, my stylus, so I have to... Don't want to lose that. There we go. I don't know how they came unscrewed. Mark.
I'm noticing people really want you to draw Stan or Rudolph the Reindeer, Red-Nosed Reindeer, or a combination of the two. So I don't know.
Okay, I'll try Stan. The few attempts I did of Stan haven't really looked so much like him. I sometimes have a hard time drawing people that I know really well, or I'm really familiar with their face, because I can't be quite as objective as I need to be about it. Which is a weird thing to say, because you think caricature arts are subjective, not objective. But objectivity means you have distance and you can separate yourself from the subject and be sort of ruthless in drawing what you need to do to make it a funny caricature. Let's see if I can find a good pic of Stan here.
Yekin wants to know, with all the skills in drawing, do you or would you find sculpting like clay modeling really something you could do?
I've done it. I recommend everybody try every medium if you can, because you'll learn something from everything you do. It's like cross-training in athletics. Well, I don't know if cross-training really helps you, in running helps you be a better swimmer, but it probably does. I don't know, right? But yeah, working in clay is awesome, because you start to think about what you're designing three-dimensionally. And in drawing, you can get away with not thinking three-dimensionally, and you can still do an okay job. But if you are one of those, if you do have elements which allow your drawing to be interpreted more three-dimensionally, if it feels more three-dimensional, I think it's going to be a stronger piece. Yeah, so you have to think about how one eye relates to the other eye, and if the head were to turn, would it still look like the person in your drawing? And that's a really practical skill. On one hand, if you're ever asked to do something like I have, which was design characters for an animated project where the person is, where you do have to do a 3D turnaround for the person, and it has to look like the subject. I did some movie project. I still can't actually talk about it, but I had to do realistic caricatures of real actors for a 3D renderer to create. So I had to not only make it look like the person, it had to work from every angle, and then I had to do the turnaround drawings. But yeah, I did sculpt a few clay pieces. I took a sculpting class at our school, and it was great. It was really, really informative, and it just, wasn't practical for me because I don't have a lot of storage space in my house. So, if you're going to be a sculptor and you want to save your pieces, you got to have a place to put them all. I'm so want to be conservative with my space and storage needs that I paint on really thin boards if I can. I don't like canvases because they're this thick, and my masonite boards are this thick, and I can fit 3 or 4 paintings on my shelf if they're masonite as opposed to one stretch canvas. Plus, the masonite boards are actually easier to prepare for me than a stretch canvas. It can be really finicky sometimes working with those. But yeah, if it interests you, do it. Even if it doesn't interest you, do it even more. Sculpting is great, yeah. So I'm looking for photos of Mr. Prokopenko here. Oh, he has a lot of photos of himself on Facebook. He really likes himself. Wow. I'm just kidding. We all do. See, I'm trying to find photos where it's not necessarily a selfie. I hate selfies because the face is too close to the camera and things get distorted. It's like if I get up to here, my ears disappear, my nose looks bigger than it really is. Sorry about that, if I saw all my pores. But yeah, it has to, the photos I like to work from are, taken from a distance and maybe zoomed in, because you're going to get a more realistic view of what that person's head looks like. Yeah, distorted photos are just terrible to work from. Whether it's a fisheye distortion or some kind of photo filter, those are just bad news.
Jeremy Neal asks, do you have any tips on drawing facial expressions?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the classes I taught, obviously. The key to drawing facial expressions is being familiar with the muscles underneath that are activating for the particular expression, and knowing their effect on the surface. So like when you smile, there's like basically like two muscles that really make a smile look like a happy smile. That's the zygomatic major muscle, which runs, originates here on the outside of the cheekbone and goes down to the corner of the mouth. And then the auricularis oculi, and that will contract as well in a real expression of happiness. See, if I just smile and don't use my eyes, it doesn't look like I'm really smiling, does it? You have to contract the auricularis oculi as well. So just stuff like that. And the book that actually taught me the most about facial expressions is Human Anatomy for Artists by Elliot Goldfinger. There's a section in there just on facial expressions and the muscles that are used to create each of the 7 basic expressions. There's something like happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, contempt. I don't know, 1 or 2 others, I'm not sure. But the Goldfinger book on anatomy is really, really good for, it's an encyclopedic breakdown of all the muscles in the human body, but the section on facial expressions are particularly well done. There's just like it's 20, 30 pages of that book. That's really all I've read. Don't tell anybody, but I haven't read the rest of the anatomy book, just the facial part. Let's see. You can ask another question while I'm looking for photos.
Sure. Marcos wants to know, where did you find reference poses of some people?
Well, for my class that I'm teaching here in Proko, they're all Google image searches pretty much, and I have to, just to be safe on the safe side, I always limit my search results to those in the public domain or that are available through Creative Commons license, where we're allowed to use them for whatever purposes as long as we get credit. If I didn't have that restriction, I would, as far as licensing and using public domain photos, I would have a lot more photos to choose from for the caricature course, but I'm fairly limited. There might be like only 1 photo out there public domain of, say, Britney Spears, and that's the one I have to use. So it's usually on Wikipedia or on the Wikimedia Commons websites, you'll find those Creative Commons images. But if you're not limited by that in your own photo research, just Google image searches and just, you can restrict your search to just the large images, the large size ones, or ones that are in color, or ones that focus on just the face. I actually do give some tips on doing image searches in the next video that will come out tomorrow, coincidentally.
Nice.
I think I found a decent photo. I think I'll just, that's Stan, right? Yeah. Oh, that's right. Where'd it go? Okay. So what were we doing with Stan here? Was Rudolph maybe? Is that?
Yeah, maybe if turning him into Rudolph.
I'm not turning him into Rudolph, but
Maybe writing Rudolph.
Maybe writing Rudolph, yeah.
He did call himself Santa Claus yesterday.
Oh, really?
He did.
So I'll kind of tell you what I think about Stan's likeness here. I think he has a head that's sort of rounder and wider than the average and shorter than the average. So my caricature is going to be, even shorter. And sort of I guess, a high forehead. And the features on his face, I think, are maybe pushed down a little further just to give him that sense of that larger forehead. I'll draw in the area where the eyes are going to be. Center line. I'm going to take my phone off, take the screensaver off the phone so it doesn't keep on darkening on me. I can't find it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, no, right. Back to drawing here. Kind of a short nose, I think. But a very distinctive ball on the end, sort of triangular and wide. Kind of small eyes. especially when he's smiling like that. They get very squinty. Heavy, dark eyebrows.
Z-Way wants to know what he should include in his art portfolio.
Well, again, like a lot of the other people asking questions, I'll say that depends greatly on what you want to accomplish with your art portfolio. I'll just assume you want to do caricature, like illustration type work. This, something that maybe if you want to get into publishing and doing editorial work, you'll want pretty much just finished caricature paintings. I don't think it's important to show people your sketching skills, your life drawing skills. Even if you might be good at it and it might look impressive, it's just something that if you want to show to someone to get a job, you want to just present the stuff that's relevant to that job. In that sense, that that's what a portfolio traditionally is. But if it's on your website, like a web portfolio, and you just want to show the world what you're doing, I would still keep it unified looking, but you have a little bit more options on a website, I think, to have different areas, like a sketchbook section, a life drawing section. Right now, my website is a little bit mishmash. There's a lot of different stuff on it, but it's a really old site, and I've completely redesigned it, and a new one's going to debut probably in the next couple of weeks. That's a lot more focused and simplified, just because I'm sick of having such a wide variety of artwork on my site, because I don't think it's really a good idea. So yeah, I would say just keep it in your portfolio, the stuff that you want to be doing more of. Just because you did once an illustration of a breakdown exploded view of an engine or a missile or something, a technical drawing, and it happens to be really good, don't put it in your portfolio if that's not what you want to do, because you'll just get more work like that. People will contact you about that thing that was really good that they liked on your site. So just keep it what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do yet, maybe, just have a general portfolio that has lots of stuff in it. But I would say keep it as focused as possible. This is going to be, more like just kind of a thumbnail sketch more than anything. My video tomorrow, I guess it's maybe not revealed yet what it's going to be, but it is going to be on the thumbnail sketch. It's talking about, strategies for beginning your initial caricature exaggeration decisions. So I hope you all are able to view that. And the point of that is, though, it's not a finished looking sketch. It's not going to be, pretty necessarily. I'm spending a little more time on this than I would a traditional thumbnail sketch, but it's going to be that initial concept that I'm talking about that is the original inspiration for the caricature, but it's not going to be the finished caricature itself. The secret to caricatures, as I say in the video tomorrow, is it's that it's not a result of just one really good sketch that you spend a lot of time on. It's from several sketches that you do. It's a process of development. And this is just, the thumbnail sketch is just the first stage in the process. That's all kind of really have time for today.
And Alfred asks, will you be critiquing the drawings on the Facebook page for caricature?
I do plan to when I have time, definitely. The reason I actually haven't done so much of that yet, I did a little bit of it, but not so much, is because I didn't give out any caricature assignments yet, and people are posting caricatures. The only thing I wanted people to do at this point was actually to do just the average head diagram and not skip that, because it is a super, super, extremely, listen to me, an extremely important thing to do is that average head diagram. Don't just skip it because it's boring. I know it's boring. Do the front view, do the side view, do it as best you can to make it look as realistic as possible and as average as possible, because you will rely on that sketch. You will constantly go back to it. It's kind of like doing that first color wheel you ever do. You'll keep it up in your studio and look at the different colors that relate, how they relate to one another. Like, oh, blue is opposite of orange. Okay, I forgot that. It's the reference point for everything you're going to do in the course. So I was hoping people would do way more of the average head diagrams than they've actually done. Only a few people have actually posted those. And I don't mind seeing the caricatures at this point. In fact, it is good to see the starting point. But I didn't want to critique them yet because we don't have the group vocabulary yet necessarily to talk about what's wrong and what's right about it. Like people aren't really, some people are posting rough sketches, some people are posting finished drawings. It's all over the map. So it wasn't really time yet, I think, to jump in and critique what people are doing, because all we've introduced so far is the concept of exaggeration and what it is in relation to the average head diagram. So after tomorrow, I'll start, I think, critiquing and reviewing things a little bit more on the Facebook page. And I won't be able to get to everybody, unfortunately, but I almost always look at every single thing that's posted, even if I don't comment. I just check throughout the day to see what people are doing and see what everyone's progress is. But I hope from week to week, or from each video to video, people will be posting work that's specifically related to the assignment I've given out, and not just post their finished drawings that they want critique on, because we'll get to that point. We're not there yet. But the Facebook group is to critique everyone's progress and how they're working at that point in the development of the class. Okay, back to Mr. Prokopenko here.
Someone wants to know, have you ever lost a friend or stuff like this because of the caricature?
No, not anyone I've known. I mean, I did really upset apparently a celebrity once that I found out about, which was awesome. I was hired by a firm, an advertising firm, to do a caricature of a particular late night talk show host. I won't say who, but I had a lot of fun with it, and they put it up, this caricature I did, on all the signage at an event he was appearing at. They put it on the tickets, they put it on the parking lot, they put it in the venue where he was doing his, I don't know if he was doing a comedy routine or just showing up to do a talk or what. But when he saw it, he was not pleased at all. He made people cry, actually, who were in charge of the event, apparently, and demanded everything be taken down with his image on it of my caricature. Again, I won't say who it is, but he was not happy with the size of his chin, is my guess. Some people just don't have a sense of humor, which is kind of ironic because that's kind of the field he's in. Yeah, so I didn't earn a friend there, but I haven't lost any friends as far as I know. Okay, let's got a rough sketch of Stan's face here. Let me shrink that down a little bit. Give ourselves some room to add more to the picture here. Yeah, I think it's a decent Stan. It's not the best I can do, definitely. It needs some refinement for sure. And again, that's one of the things I want people to understand about caricatures. It doesn't happen right away, like out of magic. Sometimes I get lucky on the first sketch, but more often than not, I have to work at it. I have to keep on drawing and do various versions of that caricature in order to really find the likeness and find the best exaggeration. And I think that's actually encouraging to people to hear that, because, you know, it's not about any magical innate gift for caricature. It's just about doing the work, and anyone can do it. It's not reserved for people just who are born with the ability. There is no inborn ability to exaggerate. I'll start with the gesture of the pose here.
Jude Ishak wants to know, do you prefer drawing caricatures of males or females more?
Gosh, it really depends. I'd much rather draw an interesting looking female, you know, than a boring looking male. It's just, I prefer to draw interesting people that are different from the average more than anything. It's not really about male or female. It's just about how different they are and how unique looking they are. Someone like Amy Schumer or Sarah Silverman, I don't know, I guess they're both comedians, but they have both interesting looks to them already. So I think they'd be more interesting to draw than someone like Brad Pitt. You know, who's a guy, he's just maybe closer to the average. And a lot of that is related to, it's just a little bit harder to draw people that are closer to the average. than it is to draw, someone who's distinctive looking. So it's not, it's not necessarily always about beauty. It's just about the, it's about how distinctive looking they are. Forgive me, I've never drawn a reindeer before, so it's, kind of looks like a horse right now, mini horse. I don't have a reference of a reindeer right now. I'm just gonna kind of guess.
Someone wants to know, is there a celebrity or person that you would say is the closest to the average head?
Just the first person that comes to mind might be Ben Affleck. But he has a face that's kind of longer than average. It's, but he has that really average look. He's a very good looking guy, but yeah, you really have to dig deeper on him to find the things to exaggerate because he is so close to my version of the standard adult male Caucasian head diagram. And anyone else? Yeah, anyone in that vein who's like a good looking young, leading man in Hollywood is like that, I guess. See, let's put some pants on. Let's put some Santa pants.
And Anime Cupid Girl wants to know, have you ever been frustrated with your art or feel like you've hit a wall?
Oh man, every day. Seriously, I mean, it's rarely is it super easy. It's always a challenge, and no matter how good you get, there's always a new challenge. There's always something else that gives you problems. You just trade in your old problems for new problems. Like when I first started doing, portrait painting at the school, at the art school, I would do, I would think maybe my big problem was just mixing color. Everything would look wishy-washy. Well, I got over that, and now my color use is pretty good on a painting. But I still have other problems, like, the eyes don't quite line up anymore. It's like the problems are still there. They just become different problems. And it's never easy. If it's easy, you're doing something wrong, or you're just drawing formulaically and repeating the same kind of things that you're strong at. Maybe if you're a cartoonist and you're drawing, your comic book character or your comic strip character like every day, that's going to be relatively easy because you've drawn them so many times from so many different angles. It's not really a challenge anymore. And the challenge though becomes coming up with new gags or finding ways to make it interesting for yourself. So yeah, it's never easy. It's always different, and new challenges present themselves every day. Got a little Santa hat here.
That's great.
Wait, that Santa hat's way too small to fit on that giant head. Maybe that's why he's not wearing it. He's at the North Pole Rodeo, I guess. Again, I really don't know what reindeer antlers look like. Keep it simple.
Which celebrity face is hardest for you to draw?
You
had trouble with Hillary, right?
Yeah, thanks. That's actually, yeah, Hillary was someone I had a lot of trouble drawing just whenever I had the assignment to draw her for an assignment. She has one of those faces that is so rubbery. It looks so different depending on the angle and her expression. If Hillary Clinton has her mouth closed, it looks like she has a tiny, tiny mouth and small lips. As soon as she smiles, though, she's got these giant horse teeth, that just giant smile. So her face looks completely different in either scenario. And I think that's what maybe threw me off about her. And, there's people that are kind of so bland that I think Stan just saw his drawing. People that are so bland. Stan isn't bland at all. He's definitely,
Can you give me some more hair? What's up with the receding hairline?
So this is why you don't let the subject see the drawing before it's finished.
Nice. All right, let you go.
Yeah. That's always fun. Let me get back to the drawing here. Something I do a lot, I don't know, maybe it's a trend I tend to repeat. Whenever I have a cute animal to draw, I like to have their tongue sticking out. I think it's funny. So I know it's kind of a trope, it's something you do a lot. But, hey. If I didn't tell you it was something I do every time, you wouldn't have known that. You would have thought, hey, that guy's clever.
Jim Sketch Testing asks, hi Court, do you find that your caricature work carries over into other unrelated styles such as landscape painting?
Landscape painting? No. I mean, there are particular, what do I call it? Not techniques, but ideas that do carry over that I try to do throughout all my art, and that's having economy of brush stroke and getting to the solution as fast as possible, especially in landscape painting. That's super important. But doing no more than is necessary for the subject. There's no reason to pull out a palette knife on a landscape and do the happy trees and the mountains with this palette knife because it looks fancy. If it doesn't call for that, if that's not how you want to express yourself, don't just do it because you saw somebody else do it. That sort of thing. That carries over from whatever genre I'm doing. It's if a subject requires having a lost edge, or I take my finger and smudge an edge away of the oil paint, I'll do that if that's what I think looks best. And that will be the same whether I'm doing a portrait or a caricature or a landscape or whatever, except for inking. Inking's totally different. You can't really, well, you can smudge it, I guess, but it has a totally different effect. Yeah, certain concepts do carry over, but landscape painting is about as far removed from caricature drawing as you can possibly get, probably. There's nothing about the landscape that I caricature other than I simplify it and maybe eliminate some things that are not necessary to convey the story. If I'm doing a hillside with all these trees, if there's 18 trees, maybe I'll just do 7 or 11 of them if that's what I think looks better. So I will edit the things I see in a landscape, but I wouldn't call that caricature so much as just I'm reimagining the composition in a way that's more pleasing to the eye. Nipple, nipple. There we go. There we go.
Someone's saying this should be Stan's Christmas card.
Heck yeah.
Has any client ever turned down a caricature from you saying it didn't look like him or her?
Yeah. When I was working in the theme parks, you would get every now and then a rejection, and that's no fun. And you'd offer to redraw it for them or give them to another artist. I would usually hand them over to another artist because I would say, if they would ask me to draw them again on the spot, can you draw it differently? They would usually just want to edit it, is what they really wanted. They thought maybe I drew their face too fat or something, and they wanted a chance to have some input on it. And that's really what the subject was. It wasn't that they didn't think it looked like them, but maybe it looked too much like them. And I would just say, no, I'm sorry, I haven't learned to draw any better in the last 2 minutes, so why don't you have this guy over here draw you instead? And sometimes they would do it, sometimes they'd walk away. And when I do commissioned work from the home studio, I would say half of them, if not more than half, will always have some feedback for me. And commissions are a little different because they're spending more money on it, and I feel for them if they don't like it or they're not happy with it. So I do try to please them, but I try to do it in a way that pleases me too. I won't violate my own caricature standards just to make them happy. but I will work within a parameter of okay, yeah, I feel okay changing this aspect if you really want me to. So I would sometimes send the clients the rough sketch just for their approval, but I think I'm going to stop doing that. I think I'm just going to just say, hey, trust me to do what's right on the job, and otherwise don't hire me. You see my portfolio, you see what I'm capable of, so just trust me to do my job. You wouldn't go into your mechanics and say, hey, why don't you put the muffler over there? I think it would look better over there. You're not going to do that because they're the professional. Trust me to be the professional and do the job for you. But yeah, you're working with customers who might have sore spots or personal issues about how they view themselves. Most people do. Most people have angles that they don't want people to view them at, or they think they have a double chin. Maybe they gave you a photo that wasn't too flattering and they should have known better. Yeah, you have to take each on a case-by-case basis and learn to read people. When I'm working live still, I do try to read people, and if they're having a lot of fun laughing, they're talking to you a lot, they're going to have more fun with the caricature no matter what you do. But if they're quiet and they start immediately talking about, oh, don't draw my double chin, don't draw my ears too big, they're going to be a little more fussy about it, and I maybe will not exaggerate as much on those people just because I don't want to create any ripples and I just want to get them out of the chair. So yeah, you got to read people and just don't be afraid to, if you want to be the kind of artist that doesn't ever compromise or work with people on what they want, then more power to you. Try that. I try to make people happy while making myself happy, if that makes sense. I try to find the middle road. Let's add a little color here just for some fun.
Someone wants to know if there are any suggestions for drawing faster.
Well, that's the thing you have to do when you're working live, for sure, is you have to draw these things super fast because you're there as an entertainer more than anything. You're there to entertain people at a party. You're not really there to create art. So if you're talking about live quick sketch, the goal is about 3 minutes, 3 minutes per face, no more. If you're spending longer than 3 minutes on a face, you're really taking up too much of their time, and you're not going to make the drawing any better. I sometimes draw in about 2.5 minutes. It depends. 2.5, 3.5 minutes, maybe tops. And the way I do that is just you draw with the marker, and you don't sketch it out at all. When you're doing quick sketch, you learn to draw with the marker and nothing else, with no safety net. And not like here where you have it, like I'm just sketching this out because I have the opportunity to. And that's really, I guess, the only time you really need to draw fast is when you're drawing for the public. And yeah, then that's the thing, is just get a good fat felt marker and just draw without any safety nets. And it's hard at first, and you're going to mess up, but it's not about making the perfect sketch. It's more about, like I said, entertaining the crowd and keeping the line moving, because you're there as like an entertainer, not a fine artist. If you want to do your drawings that take a long time, just stay in the studio. Don't draw in front of the public. Maybe it's working kind of slow here because of the screen sharing, I think. This is sort of like a digital watercolor technique I'm doing here, starting light and adding my darker shades as I go. It's the digital watercolor tool in Corel Painter, in case anyone was wondering. And once I do a layer of color, I'll hit the button that is, or the command to dry that layer, to dry that watercolor layer, and then I'll work on top of it. And so I just did one more pass of the wash, and then I'll hit the dry digital watercolors, and then I'll go back on top of it, and you can see I can do darker shades on top of it. Because with the digital watercolors, you can't keep on doing darker and darker shades until you actually dry that watercolor layer. And every time I switch to a new color, I usually dry the digital watercolor layer as well. I switched over to pink. Getting some rosy cheeks because he's out here in the freezing cold.
Choni wants to ask, how do you feel about live streaming commissioned work?
Interesting. It's never really come up, but there are technical issues to worry about. Like this, it's just it can be slow, can slow down your system, and I'm experiencing that right now. I could be drawing this and coloring this a lot faster if I wasn't live streaming, but it's taking up some resources on my tablet here. And also, I'm working at fairly high resolution. I probably maybe shouldn't have set up such a high resolution file. I think it's just 300 dpi at 16 inches wide. And if I'm doing just digital art, in a quick setting, it's just there's no real need to have a super high resolution file. I've done live quick sketch over social networking before, over a live webcam. It's tough because usually the lighting on the other end isn't very good. And the people that are posing for me are not, positioned correctly, or they're too close to the camera, or too far, and I'm really just guessing a lot of the time on what they look like. It looks kind of like Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I think, a few people have mentioned that. They always say Stan kind of looks like Leo. So.
Yeah, this is so slow. Sorry about that. Dark Ukrainian eyebrows.
How do you get people to pay for commissions?
Use a threatening voice? Is that what you mean? I don't know. No, you set up a contract. You always work with a contract. If you're not working with a contract, you are asking for trouble. And I always take a deposit before starting a commission, every single time. It's without fail. If you don't, if you don't work with a contract, and if you're charging too little, sometimes people won't respect you as an artist. They think maybe you're not serious or you're not worth enough if you're not charging enough. So charge a decent amount and act professionally. Have a solid contract in place before you start picking up a pencil. Tell them you need that contract signed, and preferably a deposit. I mean, I wouldn't say you always have to get a deposit. I mean, especially if you've worked with the people before, but the more likely it is they're going to come back and pay you the finished amount if you the rest of the fee if you've taken that deposit, you have the contract, and have in the contract what happens if they don't follow through. And it's like you add interest to the payment that's due, and you don't give them the final artwork until you receive payment. Actually, that's probably the most important thing. Don't give them the final piece until they pay. And whether that might mean sometimes you might need to take a credit card payment over online, and there's going to be a fee involved. That's okay. Those are just business costs you have to swallow if people want to pay by credit card. I try to get them to pay by check though, so there's no fees attached. But sometimes you just need to pay by credit card.
And I guess a follow-up to that question is, some person was like, whoa, contract, how much judicial help, like a lawyer or something, do you need for that? Or is it just like a piece of paper?
None at all. I mean, there are books you can find and stuff you can find online about how to write a contract for an artist. And it can be just simple, just a couple paragraphs saying, this person agrees to pay me this amount for this artwork. And then whatever other rights you want to put into it, such as any clauses like if you want only one round of revisions are allowed, just put in one round of revisions on the contract, and any revisions after that will incur an extra cost. And you can just say, like I used to do, just like an hourly fee applies to all extra hours put into this artwork after one round of revisions or after 2 rounds of revisions. And then, anything else you might want to put in there. It doesn't have to be a super legalese document and written in lawyer speak. That's really not necessary. Just something saying that they agree to pay you this amount for this job with the description that you're giving it, whatever it is, and the date that that's due by, and how much they owe you, and when the payment's due by. That's just all a contract is. Yeah, okay, almost finished with this one here. Just gonna add a little color to the hat. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did color on a separate layer, just so I can erase the color if I need to without affecting the line work. I try not to work in a whole lot of layers when I do digital painting. If I can do everything in one layer, I much prefer to do that because it keeps it nice and simple. And that's how I'm used to painting anyway. You know, when I'm working on an oil painting on a canvas, you only have one layer. So you have to do everything just painting one shape into another. And then as soon as you paint over your lines, you paint it over them. But this is, a cartoony drawing with outlines, so I wanted to preserve the line layer so I can change it or edit it later. Okay, I think that's about all on Stan there. Again, not the best likeness of Stan, but I'll work on it.
Cool. I think you have time for like a couple more questions. So if you guys have any big questions you want to ask, now's the time to ask it.
I'm getting great questions though.
Yeah.
Making me think.
Yeah. You want to tell them about the episode coming out tomorrow a little bit?
Yeah, I guess. So, maybe it didn't lay out exactly, to expect for the first part of the caricature course, but there's a real logical breakdown to each episode and why I'm showing it in that order, and why I'm breaking them down into steps, because caricature drawing is about steps. Baby steps, you might say. I like that term because it really is a universal truth. If you want to get good at anything, you got to start at the fundamentals and work your way up. Our experience of caricatures, and you're taking this course to get, fundamentals from someone else who has a lot of experience teaching fundamentals to people, because I'm going to go over things maybe you didn't realize you were doing, and I'm giving a name to it. And I'm saying, yeah, you should break it down into these steps. So tomorrow, the step we're going to learn is the very first step, the first practical step to drawing caricatures, and that's the thumbnail sketch. It's the initial idea for the caricature, and it's going to be all about exaggeration. Likeness comes into it a little bit because, you're essentially trying to chase a good likeness, but it's weird. You don't want your goal to be likeness in the thumbnail sketch. You want your goal to be extreme exaggeration, because this is the stage where you're the most free to exaggerate and do crazy stuff. After the thumbnail sketch, it's all about refining the initial idea and pulling the likeness out of it and refining the exaggeration even more. So it's the first step, and I hope people understand the lesson for what it is and don't get too ahead of themselves and try to do finished drawings, because the thumbnail sketch is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops on each sketch. And I want people to fill up a page of thumbnail sketches on the same person and explore the head shape. Try to not repeat yourself. Each sketch you do has to be completely different from the other one. If you gave someone a fat wide head in one thumbnail sketch, your next one should be a long skinny head, or a triangular head, or an eggplant shaped head. It's all about experimentation and just loosening up. So that's really the best, I think the best place to start really is with the thumbnail sketch, because that's how I start. These are the methods that I use when I really want to do a good sketch, when I really want to do a good caricature. If it's a really important job, and if I have the time, I'm going to go through every single one of these steps that I'm going to show in these videos, and it's the core principles that allow me to draw the way I do.
Cool. And let's make the last question be, are self-portraits a good way to study caricature?
Nope. Not in my experience. It's great to do them. You should do them because, you know, on your business card or your website, you should have a self-caricature. It's fun, but I think as an exercise, it's not as valuable because you're going to be too biased about how you look. You should see my own self-caricatures. They're so flattering. It's ridiculous and stupid. I try to make myself look so good, and you know that's just people's tendency to want to do that. There are some people who do really awesome self-caricatures that are very honest and critical of themselves, and I'm not one of those artists. I experiment with it sometime, but if I'm doing something for my own business card or business purposes, I'm going to put on a mailer or something. It's going to be, hey, you can trust this guy. He's a wholesome-looking dude, and this is a caricature of him. So there's all these questions and voices in your head pulling you one way or the other when you're drawing yourself, because it's the biggest battle you'll ever have is drawing yourself. And the next second biggest battle you'll ever have in a caricature is drawing someone you love or you're close to, because you're not going to be as honest as you should be in it, probably because you have emotions associated with that person. I've drawn almost no caricatures of my family because of that reason. I did some like back in the early 90s or late 90s, and I think that was the last ones I ever did of my family. But yeah, draw people you don't have an emotional attachment to. I think it's the same thing with portraiture too. It's a bad idea to just draw your niece or your daughter or your sister or your wife or your husband or something. You focus on the wrong things, in other words, when you're doing someone you're really close to, like yourself. So draw people you don't know, celebrities, whatever. The stronger opinion you have about someone like that you don't know, like if you don't like a particular political candidate, yeah, let that inform your caricature. Yeah, don't let the emotional connections get in the way when you have to draw someone close to you. But yeah, I would say for that reason, it's not a great exercise to get better at caricature. And eventually you'll want to do them because, you know, you want to give a gift to someone for Christmas that you know and love, but it's really hard. It gives an extra layer of difficulty that you don't need to deal with in the beginning.
Cool. I think that's it. Maybe you're coming back next. You're coming back next week.
Yeah. So for the 12 days of Proko, I'll be doing one more video or another live streaming where I'll actually be drawing and painting the whole time. And we'll probably be taking some questions, but I'm going to focus more on the creation of the artwork at that point. And you'll guys be able to watch, you know, over my shoulder, so to speak. I'll probably do it digitally so you can see it directly on my screen. But if we have issues with the live streaming, if it's, I don't know, maybe I might want to do a camera over my shoulder doing something real on a piece of paper. So we'll figure that out. But that's next.
That'll be sometime next week.
Sometime next week.
We don't the actual day.
We don't have an exact date yet. Just keep on watching for the announcement for my one more appearance here during the 12 days of Proko. And I hope if you haven't signed up for my class, please sign up. It supports our ability to do all of this and to give you this instruction. We like to have the free videos out there, but you know, to get people in and to just to give it out for free, just to get that knowledge out there. But if you really like what you see, I hope you can sign up for the course, because we do put in so much extra content in the premium videos with a lot more explanations and detail about the concepts. So I'll see you next week. Thanks everyone for signing in and watching.